Welcome, everyone. My name is Cameron O'Brien, and I'm an AI implementation specialist here at SkillSpout. As a quick intro for me, I've been in the consulting industry for the past 4 years now, specializing in change management. And during that time, I've been working with companies as big as Fortune 500 leaders and as small as two-person teams within our own Cleveland community. Before we do get started, I wanted to introduce SkillSpout too. At SkillSpout, we help teams adopt AI in ways that are safe, structured, and accessible. And I want you to know, one of the reasons why most AI implementations fail is because most organizations feel pressure to innovate while not being fully prepared for the change. Simply handing out an LLM login credential doesn't lead to results leaders want. And so here at SkillSpout, we take a human-first approach that focuses on your people, not just the tech. On the logistics, we'll be covering a lot of great information, but I want to make this disclaimer given the topic of today, AI policy. We want to emphasize that we are not lawyers and this is not legal advice, and we always recommend you consult your legal advisor. But we're going to respect your time and dive straight in. By the end of these 30 minutes, you'll have a framework your legal team will love and employees will actually follow. This is building your traffic light policy. So let's start with a reality check. SkillSpout surveyed clients showed that 52% of employees admit to using AI tools their company hasn't formally approved. That's the shadow AI iceberg. And it's one of the first things we assess of our clients. But let's look under the surface. What we see is personal ChatGPT accounts, random PDF summarizations, unvetted coded assistants, or just having data uploaded without your knowledge. So, who is 100% confident that no one on your team has posted customer data into a public LLM? Exactly. That's partly how we know at SkillSpout, shadow AI can lead to data leaks, intellectual property loss, and compliance breaches. All things we do not want happening in our business. So what are we to do then? Well, the knee-jerk reaction is to ban it. Block the URL, send a scary memo, but here's why that fails. There's workarounds. People will just use their personal phones or go into a different place where they can use them. There's competitors to, of course, account for. And while you're pausing, your competitors are using that same tool, but in a way that they are able to get the advantage from. And plus, there's your talent. Your best people want to use these tools. If you block them, they'll leave. The answer isn't prohibition. In this case, it's clarity on the rules. Ultimately, your team doesn't want to break those rules. They just don't know what the rules are. And importantly here, banning AI use doesn't stop shadow AI. It just limits your ability to detect it. So instead of saying no and never realizing the gains, you should have a policy. You need a policy. And it may seem difficult to start, but we are offering over this session an easy approach for you to adapt. So what is that policy? We use a model called the traffic light framework. And this mental model is simple enough to remember, but robust enough to protect you. Green is going to be the data that is go, safe to use, no approval needed. Yellow will be the area where we want to slow down and this place needs more caution or approval from leaders. And then red is going to be nope, full stop, off limits data. We cannot use this with the LLM. Going deeper, let's look at green. This is for public data, brainstorming, and first drafts, all with the goal of removing friction of AI use. The litmus test here is, would I be comfortable if the data I am using appeared in front and center on the next day's news? If you are summarizing a public earnings call from a competitor, green. If you're brainstorming a blog post title based off a public trend, green. If you're using AI for basic formatting or using it to formulate code in Excel, also green. But knowing what data your team can use AI with gives your team that psychological safety to experiment without fear. Yellow is where it gets tricky. This is where we have the judgment calls. And frankly, it's where most companies get stuck. Instead of thinking what data to limit, I want you to think about what are the processes in the middle to manage these judgment calls. We may not be able to fully define this area from the start, and that's okay. So instead of defining what can or cannot be entered, define the process to manage the edge cases. How do we do that? We teach a 3-question test for this zone. First off, who's the audience? What is the worst case scenario if this data does leak? And ultimately, who approves the output? An AI review board would be the best practice, providing space for the team to review and approve AI use and new tools, but acknowledging the reality for smaller teams, and if you are low on personnel, the policy can be used to define where you could draw the lines for each acceptable use case. I'll say this again. The policy could be written in a way to show what you can do and stipulate that anything outside of those use cases is not allowed or would need further approval. The judgment call here truly is a spectrum. And personally, I have had clients on either end of this risk tolerance spectrum. 2 that I can reference are manufacturing clients in the Cleveland area. 1 risk adverse, 1 risk tolerant. Both have successfully implemented a working AI policy, and both have weighed in on the rewards and the risks of AI use with their own goals, in part by ensuring that there are processes in place for those judgment calls to be handled. Then, of course, there's the red light. These are the clear boundaries. And I want you to think about the reputation of your business, the reputation you have of clients, and the reputation you have of yourself and the law ultimately. The following are non-negotiables and required to be protected by compliance legislation. They include customer PII, health data, financial records, and legally privileged info. If you remember nothing else from today, remember that these data types should never touch a personal LLM, or frankly, any LLM that has not already been vetted for your own data security, period. So this traffic light framework is the mental model, but to make it usable day to day, you still need it in an embedded policy. Good thing we've come prepared in bringing a complementary asset, and we don't want you leaving empty-handed today. So we have the AI policy template already linked below for you to get to compliance faster. And I'm going to show you each section so you can understand what it is and why it's important. This first section is called Purpose and Scope. This section defines the scope of the policy, and this is a very important part of any policy for any organization because employees need to know whether the policy applies to them or not. There are several sections of our AI policy template that cover the traffic light definitions, and this is the first one of those. This green part of the policy tells employees what AI tools they are free to use for work purposes. And it's important to name the tools so that everyone knows when they have the green light. Next is the red light in our traffic light definitions. These are clear descriptions of things you want to make sure that all employees understand that they are not allowed to use your AI approved tools for. And then section 4 is the privacy and security settings section. It's important to be transparent here about the security settings that you've already set up within the company managed accounts. And here, employees would learn which type of accounts and platforms can be used to either work or personal, and the general safety practices such as multi-factor authentication. Section 5 is all about principle. A principle that we hold at SkillSpout being a human-first company. And we call that principle being human in the loop. So, therefore, we call this the human in the loop clause. And this clause defines the final output of any AI piece of work where you should be the human in the loop to review its ultimate output. Now, for some of our yellow lights, let's elaborate on the traffic light definitions just a bit more. There's other pieces we need to account for. Ethical use and bias awareness is one of them. AI does not manage these without human intervention. So humans who use AI need to be aware and safeguard against unethical or biased responses from AI. Point being here is that the work you have AI draft is still your work. Make sure that you're the final expert review of the AI output ultimately meets your standards. Section 7 covers copyright and originality. Some of the content that an LLM produces could, of course, be copyrighted. This is because AI is using information that is both based off of your work and online resources. So we need to safeguard against copyrighted standards, i.e., have your fingerprints on the output. And then the next section is about training and updates. AI technology is new and changing fast. ChatGPT reached critical mass in 2023 when it surpassed 1 million users. That moment marked a shift. AI moved from being something experimental to something mainstream and widely accessible. And now we're at the beginning of 2026. And what we understand about AI today is not what we understood in 2023. And it will not be the same even a year from now. The capabilities are evolving quickly. The use cases are expanding. The tools are becoming more integrated with every single one of our everyday workflows. So, because of that, we can't treat AI knowledge as static. If we rely only on what we learned when AI first emerged, we will fall behind. So staying effective means we need to continue to learn about AI, continue to experiment, and continue to update our understanding as the technology advances. The opportunity is not just to use AI as it exists today, but to stay current enough to recognize what becomes possible tomorrow. The next section we have is on governance and compliance. This is where we address the review cadence for this policy, i.e., how often we want to revisit this policy to make sure it is still relevant. And it describes the ultimate point in time where we need to get our policy, along with all of our other ones, in order. And similar to training, we need to ask ourselves, how often will we revisit the governance to make sure that this policy is still relevant? How often do we need to go back to ensure our training's relevant and that we're learning about the new things that we need to ultimately to stay up to speed? Then to close out, we have section 10, questions and reporting. This is the section that tells employees what to do if the policy is incomplete or does not resolve a question. It also tells employees where to go to report improper use of AI at work. This is the escalation path. An important piece that, number one, I want to mention is that it ensures that employees get the right answer, and that number two, it ensures the AI review board is also keeping a pulse on the edge cases employees are finding. All the things we just discussed are included in this AI policy template, and the link to the traffic light policy is linked below. Download it. It's yours. Make the customization edits as you see fit, and then ultimately run it by legal. This framework truly is simple enough you can implement next week. But here's the reality check. A second one. Everything I just showed, the framework, the template, the definitions, this is maybe about 20% of the problem. And it's an easy 20%. The hard part is training, not a one-time webinar, ongoing, role-specific training that gets your managers to actually recognize when someone is operating in the yellow zone and to make the right call. That takes repetition. It takes scenario-based practice, and it takes real examples from your industry. The hard part is also governance. Every time a major model update drops, every time a new tool enters the market, your policy needs to be reevaluated. Someone has to own that process, and they need the expertise to make good calls under time pressures. The hard part is also culture. Moving from shadow AI, where people use tools secretly in hopes nobody actually notices them use it, to transparent AI, where we feel safe and we feel that we can use it without having to ask too many questions or flagging edge cases, that we can use it friction-free. And that's a culture shift. And a culture does not change simply because you distributed a PDF. Ultimately, without training, governance, and a culture change, your policy is still a document. But with them, it's a competitive advantage. Close out, If this framework resonates with you and you want help applying your specific situation, we offer a complimentary 30-minute discovery call. No pitch. We'll audit where you are, where the friction lies, and whether training with us is even the right next step for your team. The link is below, and spots are filling fast, especially with TechCred, so grab one if you're interested. I'll stay on for a bit longer to answer questions. But I will also note that this training was part of a wider webinar series where me and my colleagues will continue to explore and democratize AI knowledge to you all. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for more SkillSpout specific webinars in the near future. Thank you.